I was trying to find a segue into the main part of the interview.
Yes.
But of course, there really is no perfect way.
Hmm.
But obviously this interview is mostly going to be about you and the pool itself. So
Hmm.
let's start with you. So
Yes.
what was it? What was it like growing up in Yaden?
Okay. Growing up in Yaden, it was, it's good times and it's bad times. Growing up in Yaden, the youngest of 19 children. My mother, same father. My mother had 19 children in 25 years. And so we moved out from West Philadelphia when I think my mother had her 14th child because we were in a three-bedroom row home. So then we moved out to Yaden to a larger home. And when we first got here, we got here in my brother Jerry is probably in the late 50s is when we arrived in Yaden. And Yaden at that time was predominantly white. And, so we had its racial strife, but this section of Yaden is where a lot of the African Americans came up from the South, and a lot of the African Americans from Philadelphia wanted to move out to the suburbs. So they moved out to this section of Yaden. We had a great school program, great school district. So I was very happy. Well, again, when I was first born, but growing up in Yaden was a very, very positive and very, very good. I enjoyed living in Yaden while growing up.
Uh, your was it your oldest brother or your brother who is in his late 50s now? Would you mind talking about him a little bit? Well, like, what was your experience with your family?
Oh, okay. Well, again, being the youngest of 19 children with 18 that live now they're 17 of us living was good. I mean, it had its ups and downs. I mean, we didn't grow up as the richest, family because again, having that many children, had its challenges. But there was always love in our family. We always, we were poor, but we didn't know we were poor. I mean, I wore hand-me-downs until I was 15 years old. I cut grass and shoveled snow, and that's how I got my first pair of Converses. Before then, Mom would go to the A&P, buy about 10 pair of sneakers, Bobos, and she'd throw them on the floor and say, hey, whatever pair fits are yours. So, so we just worked hard. I worked hard all my life, as did most of my family members. So we grew up with a very, very serious work ethic. We had to work, you had to, kind of work hard to be successful. So I kind of grew up with that ethic, and I kind of brought that ethic over here to the Nile Swim Club. But I enjoyed growing up with a large family. I wouldn't have it any other way.
That's about you in the book, and
Hmm.
I heard your story about like your personal story with an eye. Would you mind
Oh,
sharing
sure,
that with us?
absolutely. So growing up here in Yaden, because like I said, coming from such a large family, we could not afford a Nile membership back then. So the manager that was here at the time, Mr. Young, would basically we'd hang out at the gate, and Mr. Young would pick 4 or 5 kids a day. They could come into the pool, and they would allow us to clean up the trash, pick up trash, and clean the tiles in the pool. And once you did that, you got to swim for a day, and then you also got lunch, hamburger, fries, and a drink. So I pretty much would hang out here pretty much every day, and then I would come in and clean up, pick up trash, and make sure everything was clean and everything, and then I would get to swim for a day. And that's pretty much how that was my entry into the Nile Swim Club, along with several of my other brothers and sisters.
So you briefly mentioned, oh, I already forgot his name, Mister.
Mr. Young,
Yeah, Mister Young.
yes, there's
Uh, would you mind telling us about Mister Young?
Mr. Young was a great man. Again, very hard worker, and he instilled hard work in everyone that he brought into these gates. He was a great man, as were many of the Nile Swim Club managers. And as you know, the Nile Swim Club went through some very challenging times, as is in the book. So those challenging times, we fought through those. I mean, but when I arrived in I believe this is in 2018 or 19. When I first got here, we had about 75 members, and we're about $250,000 in debt, and the pool was heading into bankruptcy and foreclosure. And I pretty much jumped into the action along with our other board members and said, they're not taking our pool. Under no condition will allow them to take our pool. So the first thing I did was I reached out to my brother Sam Patterson, who's relatively well off, and he was the first one to write a check for $50,000 to pay down on our taxes. And I reached out to other folks that I knew that were relatively successful, and they began to write checks. And then I was able, and then I pretty much did some remodeling and fixing up. And then we went on a very serious membership drive. And right now we have over 1,300 members. So we went from 75 members to over 1,300 members last year. And I'm very proud of that fact.
It's very, very